to the Curious Skein podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am the dyer behind the Curious Skein yarn. And you can find me on all of the socials as the Curious Skein. This is episode 4. It is Saturday, June 27th after 5 p.m. And I'm going to try to make this pretty quickly because we need to get to dinner. Let's start with what I'm wearing. I have some notes over here to the side. I'm using my computer. And I'm going to try to keep my hands off the table as much as possible so I'm not bouncing the camera around. This is the Early Light by Samantha Guerin. I made the size 4. I used my hand-dyed yarn in Glacial Blue, which is the same yarn and base that I used to make my salty air tea. I used just under 2 skeins of this. I pulled 4 because I wasn't sure how much I would use. And I thought anything extra I could maybe make a pair of socks with, but I've now got 2 full skeins that I can do something with. Let me lower this a little bit so you can see the shirt as a whole, and I'll move the chair out of the way. So this is the Early Light. Now I alternated skeins, but I started alternating after I did the short rows in the back. Like I said, I used the same yarn as my salty air tea. It had a slightly different gauge. The salty air had a slightly different gauge as the Early Light. Sorry, brain cramped. So I had to do a little bit of gauge math when it came to splitting for the sleeves. I wasn't terribly worried about once I split for the sleeves, I could just knit it as long as I needed to be. It's meant to have a little bit of positive ease, so I wasn't terribly worried about the ease either being too much or too little. I figured it would work its way out. I think my stitch count was pretty close. It was the row count that was a little different from what the yarn she was using for the pattern. And the salty air was maybe 5 rows longer in its gauge than the Early Light was. So I had to do a little bit of gauge math when it came to splitting for the sleeves. So what I ended up doing was I went into the pattern and I looked at the schematic, and it said the yoke depth was supposed to be 8.5 inches. So if you divide 8.5 by 4 to get that multiple was 2.127 or something like that. So then I took the difference in the row gauges, which was 5, I took that and I multiplied it by that 2 point whatever, and I got 10.6, which told me I needed probably at least 11 additional rows. What I ended up doing was doing 12 because I like even numbers. For some reason, I just didn't like 11. 11 felt weird. So I did 12. I did split for the sleeves when I did 6 additional rows just to see where things were going, and it was way too tight up here. So I did the additional 6 rows, split for the sleeves, and it fit perfectly. So I thought, all right, I did that right. Let's see what else. I did alternate, like I said, I alternated skeins through the yoke. I did it through the center back, and it went right through this pattern, so it was not a problem. You can't see it, you can't, there's nothing going on there. I did, when I split for the sleeves, I moved it to under the left underarm, just in case there would be any type of line or pulling. That way it would be hidden under the underarm. I knit the body to 11 inches and then did 8 rows for the ribbing, and I think it's a perfect length. I wish I had knit the salty air just a little bit longer than it was, because this is a good length. And then I had counted the number of rows I did on the ribbing on the bottom, and I just repeated that when it got time to do the sleeves. Now with the sleeves, I did not do the decreases. I didn't alternate skeins on the sleeves either, because it was like maybe this much. It was not much at all that you had to do. Like from here, can you even see that? See where my thumb is down? It was like maybe that much right here. So I wasn't too worried about it pulling or doing anything weird on the sleeves. But what I did, when I picked up all the stitches, somehow I end up picking up extra stitches. I'm not sure what I do that every time. It does make for a tidy underarm, so I don't mind it, but then I have to reduce the number of stitches down to what the pattern calls for. So what I ended up doing was I got those stitches down to what the pattern called for by either reducing every row or every other row, depending on how many how many stitches I had picked up and what the difference was. And then I got to, it said to knit for like an inch, and then you were going to do a 2-row repeat that included some decreases. And I chose not to do those decreases because I've got a bit of a bicep, and I have found in the past that with some of my shirts, it's a little tight around the sleeve when I do that. I prefer to delay the decreases until I get past the bicep, like closer to this elbow. And I find that it's just a much more comfortable fit. So I just omitted those decreases. I did the 4 rows. I didn't do any decreases. And then I did the 8 rows of ribbing to match what I had done for the bottom of the top. Okay, moving on to works in progress. This is the only finished object I've got. Let's pull the By the Bay Bag Co. over. This is what my early light and my salty air was living in, and it's got all the leftovers. So let's see. I have cast on For the Weekend Cami by Amy Sher. Let me see if I can find it in here. There we go. There's so much in here. I'm working on the front. I have joined the left front and the right front. I'm like 1 or 2 rows past that join. I did miss a spot in the pattern where you were doing some set of shaping here, and then you were supposed to do 3 rows back and forth, and I missed that in the pattern when I did the right. I saw it when I was doing the left, and I went, you know what? I didn't do it for the right, so we're not going to do it on the left. We're going to let it go. I think the only major problem I might have is it'll bring this up a little bit further than maybe it would have been in the pattern, and I might have to do those 3 rows before I join the front to the back. I'm not terribly worried about that. After going through what I did and figuring this out, I feel a lot more confident about working those types of things out. So that is my leftovers for my early light, and my salty air are in here, and I'm working on the weekend cami. Next up is the Avenue scarf. The bag is by Intensely Distracted on Etsy. This is perfect for a 1 skein project. Fits perfectly. I'm going to use my thing here. I am knitting the Avenue scarf by Galt House of Yarn. I believe it is a free pattern, but I'm just going to show you the top part here just in case. Like I said, it's perfect for 1 skein of yarn, and the instructions actually have you weigh the yarn before and after. And it's like a 6-row repeat. You just do the same thing, and then like on row 6 you increase or decrease or something like that. So it's super potato chippy, super easy. This is using, come back here. This is using my Arctic Frost yarn. And let me see, I think I've got a skein of Arctic Frost here. I have that available on my 75/25 Voyager base. And so this is dyed with pops of this glacial blue. This glacial blue came from this skein, from some of what I'd mixed up for this skein, this blue in here. And there's also pops of pink, of that hot pink, that frosted rose. So they're designed to somewhat coordinate with each other. And so I decided to make a scarf out of this. And we'll see how it is a little wonky here, but I don't care. It's going to be tight around my neck. I'm going to block it. It'll be fine. I like that the pattern, I think the pattern is somewhat forgiving because I kind of got off track, I think, a few times. You're supposed to do so many rows and then you do an increase, and I've like got distracted on how many rows I was doing, and I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think it's fine. It's all going to work out in the end. It's a nice 1 skein project, so you weigh, and then about approximately halfway through, you figure out where you're at, and then you just you start decreasing. You just leave yourself a few extra grams just for, you know, safety's sake. Okay. So I think it's perfect. It's made for a fingering weight yarn, which is what I was looking for. I don't want anything too bulky around my neck. I'm in perimenopause. I get hot all the time. We don't want that. These are my Moonjoy socks, and they are in, what is the bag? The bag is Inspired by Nerd on Etsy. And let's see, they got a little tangled the other day when I pulled these out. So let's see if these are going to be a little, they're going to behave. So this is the first sock, and the stitch markers are by JenGStitchesandCraft on Etsy. This one, I've got the ball of yarn tucked down in there to try to prevent some of the tangling that's been happening. This one is ready for a heel. This one, I've just barely gotten started on it. These are for John. They are a travel knitting project. So for John, I am knitting these on 2.25 millimeter Chiaogu needles, magic loop. For John, I cast on 80 stitches for him. He has a size 12 foot. I did order, finally found on Etsy, some sock blockers that say they're for size 12 plus. So I'm crossing my fingers that I can actually block his socks, because his socks, I tried 72 inches. Most of the patterns I had went up to 72 inches. They were too small. We couldn't get them over his heel. So I went up to 80 stitches, but I now can't block his socks because my sock blockers aren't wide enough. So we're going to see if these sock blockers are wide enough for his feet. I'm kind of excited about that. But like I said, I cast on 80 stitches. I do a German twisted cast on. And then for his project, or his socks, they're just a travel knitting project. I don't do a pattern for him. I just keep it simple. So for this sock, this is my Earthrise socks, and they are living in TheKnitMcKinley on Etsy. The pattern I'm doing is Rockpool by Mina Phillips. And let me pull out the socks. So this one, they're pretty close in size to each other. I think I'm doing like one repeat on one and then one repeat on the other. The stitch markers are from TheWoollyWolfe on Etsy, and I think they're called a celestial themed. And that one has a moon, and this one has a planet. So these are mine. I know I need 9 pattern repeats for how long I like my socks. I think I'm at 7. So I'm really close to being able to do the heels for these socks. So I'm hoping to maybe get those pattern repeats done this coming week, and maybe next week can work on the heels. I tend to prefer to work on the heels on the weekends, just because you've got to set some time aside to focus on what you're doing. I'm not one that can put my sock down mid-heel. I can't do that. I got to finish it. In this bag are my pressed petals socks. The bag is by Charming Necessities. I got this one in I believe a library themed bag from them. These are the Riverbend socks. So the Riverbend and the Rockpool were both in a collection of patterns, I believe, called Beyond Vanilla. Ooh, what is the light doing? Beyond Vanilla. And I bought the whole collection. These use similar techniques, similar stitch techniques. This is just a 4-row repeat, where that one is an 8-row repeat. This one's very potato chippy. I've gotten the heels done. I've turned the heels, so I'm just ready to just go, go, go. I will probably be taking either this one or my Earthrise to work with me this week to try and get a little further along on these. I did not get anything I did not do any work on my Jewy shawl by Joji Locatelli. I kind of knew I wouldn't, because it's a shawl, it's big, it's kind of bulky, and we're in the middle of summer, and I don't really want something that big and bulky on my lap. Let's talk about acquisitions. For my birthday this month, I got myself an EE Nano e-spinner. I also have in a box on the other side of the room a Turkish spindle. I think I probably need to learn how to use the Turkish spindle first. This has been rather humbling. Let's put it that way. But that was I got that for my birthday, and I'm hoping to learn how to do some spinning. I completely suck at it. I'm not gonna lie, I completely suck at it. If you guys know of any YouTube channels suggestions to how to even begin for like a super beginner, you know, any channels or any videos that you would recommend, please put them in the comments down below. I'd be happy to check them out and see if I can't get some tips on how to get started. So let's talk about general shop news. I think I talked about last time when I started my shop last year, I decided to dye yarn that I would like to knit with. And that's one reason you're seeing so much of what I'm knitting with is my own yarn. If you happen to want a sweater's quantity of yarn, there is an automatic discount for 5 or more skeins of the same color or base of yarn. If you sign up for my newsletter and then confirm your email address through your, when you get that confirmation email, you will receive a code for 10% off of your next order. That can be combined with other sales. So if you choose to order a sweater's quantity and you have that discount from the newsletter, you can combine that with other sales. You can combine those two discounts. If you would like a sweater's quantity of something, I think there's 2 skeins of this left in the shop. I will dye that at some point in the future. If you're interested in it, just email me and let me know how many skeins you would like of it, and I'll put that on my dye list, and I'll work that up in the next couple of weeks. I don't dye very often every month, but I do get a chance to dye maybe twice a month. Sock sets. As I've discussed earlier, I still have a few sets of the Moonjoy and Earthrise, or actually I have more. I did dye up earlier this month some Moonjoy and Earthrise sock sets. And then I also dyed up the pressed petals this month. And then what I dyed this past week, I was on vacation this week. I want to talk about that a little bit. So as I said, my birthday was this month. And when I was very little, I remember standing on the porch with my dad, and I noticed that all the houses up and down the street, we lived on a kind of a curve, and all the houses up the street and down this way all had their flags out. I was maybe 4 years old around this time. And I remember saying to my dad how nice it was that everybody put their flags out for my birthday. And then my dad burst my bubble, and he said, they aren't putting the flags out for your birthday, Stephanie. They're putting the flags up. I don't think I'm up high enough. Nope. Yep, there we go. He said, he said, they're not putting the flags out for your birthday, Stephanie. It's because it's Flag Day. I was devastated. I'm not going to lie to you. I was devastated at the time. But I still like to secretly believe that they put the flags out for my birthday. And this year, I've always wanted to do like something in the colors of the flag. I think for a while there, I was buying patriotic fabric. I was going to do a quilt one year, never got around to it. I was going to do different things, but I decided this year to dye a colorway to celebrate Flag Day. And this is Dawn's Early Light. It's a sock set. So there's a bit of a blue and a red, a vermilion red with some sections of white. And then there's pops of the steely gray in there. And then I did a bluish gray tonal to go with it for the mini. And that is Dawn's Early Light. This is the 90-20. And this is the 75-25. You can see a little bit more of the pops of gray on this skein here. So that is Dawn's Early Light. I have plenty of both bases in the shop if you're interested in those. And yes, I've already ordered needles so I can cast those on this week or next. I will probably be caking those up later this evening or tomorrow. Let's see. I think I talked about last time that work was really crazy for the first half of the year. And I took this last week off. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed home, tried to get a few things done around the house. I did a lot of resting. Like I said, I've been in a bad flare for much of the last few months, so I've been trying to not overdo it. I really wanted to get this light fixture I bought. I bought this light fixture for the bathroom a year ago, and I was really hoping I would get that installed this week, and that didn't happen. But my hope is that dyeing yarn gives me an activity that helps me, one, block out the world so that I can reduce my stress level, which really helps with my illness. And then that this podcast will help me connect with new people. And, you know, the disease is very limiting. It's very isolating at times, and I'm trying to find a way to connect with other people through what I knit. Often, even when I'm very tired, I can sit in bed and knit, which is why I do get so much knitting done, but that's about all I can do. And there are sometimes I'm even too tired for that. Let's see. So, all that to say, I hope you want to connect with me because I would like to connect with you. Let's see what I've been reading. Like I said, I've been keeping a commonplace book this year. I talked about it a little bit more on last podcast, and I've got some stats here. So the total books I've read for the year, I finished one yesterday. The total books for the year are 46. My May total was 8, and so far for June, I've listened to 5 books. And those 5 books are Murder on the Rocks by T.E. Kinsey. It's part of the Lady Hardcastle series. And Lady Hardcastle, the series is actually told from her lady's maid Flo's point of view, and the banter between the two of them is hilarious. Veil of Lies by Helena Marchmont. In that series, Alfie McAllister is a tech millionaire. He had a tech startup, sold it, got a lot of money, and he no longer has to work. And he inherits a cottage in the small town of Bunbury and decides to move to Bunbury and ends up teaming up with 2 elderly women to solve crimes. And they call themselves the Bunbury Triangle, which is very cute. And those are small novellas that are just a couple of hours long in each of the audiobooks. So pay attention to the prices of the smaller books. The small ones like the Bunbury series or the Cheringham series, they're just a few dollars. You don't want to be wasting a credit on that. Let's see, Murder at the Homecoming by Maren Allingham. That's part of the Flora Steele series. I don't remember which one it is, but I think I'm up to like 14 or 15 or something like that in the series. I mentioned last time the big sale I got, and I picked up a couple of a bunch of new series. And I've listened to also Swamp Sniper by Jana De Leon and Swamp Team 3 by Jana De Leon. And both of these are part of the Misfortune series. And Misfortune, it's kind of a fish out of water series where this woman who is a CIA operative who is hiding out in a small town, her cover has been blown. Some bad guys are looking for her. You find this out in the first book and like the first few pages of the first book, so I'm not giving anything away. But she's sent to this small town in Louisiana to hide out, and come to find out it's not a quiet, sleepy small town. And she ends up teaming up with 2 elderly women to solve crimes, and it's absolutely hilarious. Some of the antics they get up to are absolutely hilarious. So that's a fun one. I did start the Curious Skein forum in Ravelry, or a group in Ravelry, and I posted the show notes there last episode, and I will post the show notes for this episode out there. And I've also started a thread on the books that I've been reading for the year. So I will add these books to that list. What I've been watching, I haven't been watching a whole lot. I've been watching a lot of knitting podcasts on YouTube. I've been watching This Little Wonderful Life. She's been doing a vlog series for June. I've been watching that, and I really feel for them because they're in a heat wave right now, and they're not prepared for it. And in America, we tend to make fun of them because they consider like 80 something a heat wave, whereas over here we're like, that's just spring. But as they've pointed out, their buildings are not built to withstand heat. They're built to withhold heat. And so when it heats up, their house is like just an oven. I cannot imagine. I used to live in Texas. I live in Ohio now, but I used to live in Texas, and we lived in a house that did not have air conditioning for a while. And you would leave the house to cool off. You would go sit outside in the sun to cool off. So I do understand. So what have I been watching television wise? We've been watching The Other Bennett Sister. I got back into that this week, and all of the episodes have now dropped. John was watching it with me the other day, but he's not that into it, so I think I'll finish it on my own. Together, he and I have been watching Schitt's Creek, and then we also were watching John Adams. I think we have 1 or 2 more episodes left in that series. Beyond Paradise has some new episodes that dropped this month, and we've watched a few of those. And so let's see, I think I'm about done. I'm going to end with this. Last week I shared a quote from Shakespeare, and this week I looked up a quote, and this one is, I am always doing what I cannot yet do in order that I may learn how to do it. And that's by Vincent van Gogh. And I feel like that's appropriate because I feel like in the last year, even months, few months, year, I have been learning a lot of new things and trying to challenge myself to try new things and learn new things, learn new skills. So, with that, thank you so much for being here with me today. If you are interested in any of the yarn I shared today, you can find it at thecuriousskein.com. As always, I can be found on all the social media platforms as The Curious Skein. I hope you have a wonderful week next week. And until next time, stay curious, my friends.